my name is Sophia, and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So today I am once again talking about school spirits, and I'm talking about Season 2, Episode 7, The Anatomy of a Fallout Shelter. So once again, starting out with some of the important plot points. So first of all, I just wanted to note how crazy it was that Claire literally told Diego the entire story. Like, when in the last episode, when he saw her slash the tires and he was questioning her, and she was saying, oh, I'll tell you everything later, let's just keep driving. I thought, that she was gonna make up some sort of story. Did not realize that she was gonna actually tell him the truth about ghosts and everything. So it is kind of funny that he seemed to kind of just believe her very quickly and everything. Okay, so obviously this conversation that happened between Mr. Martin and Janet was very interesting. It was very weird seeing them together again. And Mr. Martin mentions how this isn't exactly how we imagined getting out, but we're here now, we may as well take advantage of this. So I did think that was interesting because we weren't really sure if their plan was trying to cross over, trying to possess people, or just trying to leave the school in some way. But, of course, Janet points out, but the thing is, this isn't really my body, this isn't my life. So even if I, made achievements and stuff, it would be under Maddie's name, and, it would just be complicated because it wouldn't really be her, and she'd always have to, pretend she's this different person and everything. And of course, Mr. Martin's just like, well, whatever, it will be your life and all this stuff. But Janet is definitely starting to think more rationally. And she also says to him, why do you need me? You can just go ahead and do whatever you want. And of course, he kind of says, it's been us for 66 years. And this is something that I'm still very confused about and very much questioning. What is exactly Mr. Martin's motive, and why exactly is he so adamant about Janet always being with him and everything? And he says how they used to always say we need more time, which obviously is what that mysterious woman in the scar said, so don't know exactly what that is a reference to. And oh my gosh, the fact that he said to her, do you even know where you would cross over to? Insinuating that she would maybe, go to hell or something. I'm like,
bro, if anyone's going to hell here, it's you.
And when he says, you owe me, I think from the rest of the context of the episode, I think he just means, how she didn't want to go forward with the plan immediately because she didn't want to hurt the other ghosts. And then he kind of took that as, well, now you owe me because, you didn't let me just, go ahead with all the experiments. And I just said good for Janet for smacking him because he deserved that. Although I do feel bad that it was, Mr. Anderson's body getting smacked into the water. But, I just wanted to briefly say the, little date that Maddie and Wally had with, the projections on the wall was really sweet. But it was also sad hearing her say, I wish we could have actually gone to these places together in life and all of that. And I just think it's very interesting how you can really see this internal conflict within Maddie and Wally of for 2 seasons now, Maddie has been, trying so hard to get her body back, but now that it's actually becoming a closer reality, it's hard because she also has now been with these ghosts for quite some time, and she's really established an emotional attachment to them too, especially Wally, obviously. And, it's also hard because he was, under the impression for a long time that, obviously, they all thought that she was really dead. So, it's not like they could have predicted that she wasn't really dead and it was just a ghost that possessed her. They wouldn't have thought of that. So, of course, it takes some adjusting in his mind to be oh, I thought this person I'd be able to spend eternity with practically. And I just also wanted to shout out the little ghost reference that we got with Charlie and Yuri, which I did predict was going to be in this episode because of the clues in the clue box, the pottery kit, and some comments that Shredhead on Reddit made and stuff. So Quinn and Rhonda. So I am so happy because I feel like this comes so full circle to my very first slide that I had about in my first video, because I had said, like, when Quinn was trying to find her key, I was like, I just have a feeling that she is going to find her actual key eventually, and I think that's going to help her discover something, and that's exactly what happened. She figured out that it was actually her field marker that was in her pocket was her key, and she goes in her scar, and obviously, you know, she says it's terrible, but then she also found that paper that Janet had wrote about trauma is energy. And of course, later in the episode, we had her and Rhonda having a little heart-to-heart when Quinn feels like she, like, was making everyone fight by the fact that she found this paper and everything, and she's talking about how she maybe caused some arguments when she was alive in the band. I am happy that Quinn and Rhonda have kind of found solace in each other, and I love that it's kind of showing how Rhonda is healing a lot of trust issues within her. So, once again, talking about Nicole and Xavier really quick. I'm sorry, I just can't with Nicole at this point. Like, I feel like she was just once again being so, like, weird and angry again for, like, no reason. Like, when Xavier finally told someone about, you know, Maddie's dad that he saw in the hospital, and she just, like, attacked him and was like, you can't tell Maddie about that, she might not want to come back, blah, 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 and she just got so mad, and I was like, of course Xavier gets kidnapped because Nicole leaves him alone, so thanks Nicole once again. And, oh, I also just said how Mr. Martin is so scary when that shot where he, like, walks in and he's, like, you know, drenched and covered in blood and everything. And I also just thought it was funny, though, when they find Xavier and Nicole's like, Claire, you go get him. And she's like, why me? And she's like, you're on the swim team. So there's a lot going on with Simon, obviously, in this episode. He finds out that he's been suspended because he's been missing a bunch of classes and everything, trying to help Maddie and all this stuff. And so him and Maddie kind of have this argument because he is frustrated because he feels like, you know, he went through all this trouble to get Janet there, and he thought Maddie was just gonna, like, you know, immediately do the body swap and everything, and now she's not, and she's just like, they're just sitting around and just talking and everything. So I definitely, you know, it's a tricky situation. I see both sides because I do feel bad for Simon because he has done all this work. But, you know, once again, it is complicated because I can also see Maddie's point of view because now she has spent so much time with the ghosts. Like, she wants to hear why Janet did what she did and, you know, figure out how maybe her ghost friends can cross over and everything. Because she, you know, it's hard to just, like, leave them high and dry when you've, like, formed this connection with them. So I see both sides, but I did think Maddie did get a little rude, though, when she was just immediately just like, okay, fine, you could just leave. I was like, okay, like, once again, think about it from his perspective for a second. Of course, we see he calls Northwestern and is like, I want to redo my interview. So, you know, he's feeling a lot of feelings about that. Okay, so obviously this is, like, the main point of the episode is everything that Janet finally reveals to us. So, first of all, I just had to say also, it was so weird, like, seeing Janet and Maddie together, like, just two Maddies. But obviously Janet says that she started the fire, which I don't really believe that that's the full truth, because the fact that they didn't show a flashback of it makes me think that there's still more to it. And, you know, we still haven't figured out what Eugene said he saw. And I know that in next episode, we're gonna see them break into his locker. So that's why I don't think that's, like, the full story. And, you know, she talks about how they found their hellscape, but they couldn't figure out anything about it. But then when Rhonda died, as they were leaving the room, and Rhonda, like, dropped her letter, and Janet saw the red glowing from the room, and that's how she kind of started to figure out what the hellscapes were, and she would collect the keys so that she could try to figure out about them more. Which also, seeing, like, the moment that Rhonda died and just how scared she was and everything was so sad. But it was also, like, really interesting to see, like, you know, it just being the three of them. Little moment with Dawn was very sweet, and I really loved that moment because also I missed Dawn. I love how Dawn, you know, everyone always thought she was so ditzy or whatever, but she's actually the one that would uncover all of these things, and the fact that she kind of figured out that the lights would always flicker when someone was in a scar, which means it was kind of powering some like energy. And also it seems like her key was her light bulb, and she had been inside her scar, but she had actually made it less scary by doing what her mom always told her to do when she was anxious, which was picture feel the flowers. And she would always picture marigolds, of course, which we saw when Maddie went into her scar. And yeah, so the theory that someone had on Reddit last time, that was like, more you heal, like the less scary your scar becomes, I do think that is pretty accurate. But maybe it also is kind of like Dawn said, like you can just kind of make it become more beautiful if you're like in a more calm state of mind while you're in it. So this is how Janet comes to the hypothesis that the scars are fueled by trauma, and that's what makes them exist, and that's why the key is never reset. Yori points out that because of the Hawthorne effect, which is how subjects will change their behavior when they know they're being observed, that's why she didn't like tell any of the ghosts about what she was doing. So obviously they all felt pretty hurt, like, why didn't you tell us? So that explains that. And yeah, obviously her main hypothesis is trauma is energy. And she says that the fence that keeps them from leaving the school is an electromagnetic barrier, and she thinks that if they all go in, all their scars at once, it'll break the barrier from how much energy all of the trauma at once is creating. But of course, Mr. Martin is kind of taking advantage of this hypothesis, and he wants to literally just trap everyone in their scars, which is terrible. And she said how she feels like she lost herself in her partnership with Mr. Martin, and that's kind of what makes Simon feel upset, because he realizes that he kind of feels the same way, but with Maddie, about her Sweet 17. When Mr. Martin gave her the watch, it was him like reminding her of what was at stake, like trying to get her to continue the experiments. But because she didn't want the ghost to have to go through that, she decided she would just try to go into her scar for long periods of time. They just told everyone that she crossed over in order to avoid outside exposure. So he started to become really tortured by this. And at some point, Mr. South came in and actually saw Mr. Martin, because all the trauma had actually briefly thinned like the veil between the dead and the living. And so that was also interesting, because there was also a Reddit post that I talked about last week that someone thought that Mr. South knew something, and Shredhead had commented he's seen something. And Janet also explains how when Maddie got there, she wasn't trying to, be malicious and like hurt Maddie or anything. She literally was just so, tortured by that point, and she just like had to get out. And so she literally just like, she didn't even know if it was gonna work. She just like ran into Maddie, and then it worked, and that's how she got out. So that explains why, a lot of her actions like in Maddie's body were very like not super well thought out, because when I thought that she had been planning how to possess someone, I was like, why is she like so, a lot of her actions are so like not thought out well, like what she's gonna tell the police, and like where she's gonna go and what she's gonna say to the mom and everything. But now it makes sense, because she didn't really have a plan, because it was just completely accidental. Oh, and this was interesting. So I noticed this, and a lot of people have been talking about this too, that when they basically realized that the scar that Maddie went into was actually Mr. Martin's, which I did also predict, there's like a caption on the screen where it says, "I was haunted by my father," but she doesn't actually say it. So I don't know if that was like something in the episode and then they went back in and cut it out, but then it was still in the captions. That has led me to believe a lot of these new theories that I've been thinking of, that maybe her dad had something to do with the fire and everything. We kind of think at the end that Mr. Martin might actually, or probably is, Janet's key. And of course, at the very end, we see Mr. Martin driving away in Diego's car, and he puts on this really creepy old song that's like talking about the devil. So now I'm gonna do my little review of the episode. I would give this episode a 9 out of 10, because I did really love it. Like, I thought it, explained a lot, it gave us a lot of answers, but I just knocked it down 1 point because, I don't know, episode 5 of the season, like, is still my favorite. I think just the nature of the 5th episode I just liked a little bit better with the dinner scene, and the fact that there was still more like mystery to it. So some of the highlights of the episode were seeing Janet and Mr. Martin interact once again, even though I felt bad for Janet, but it was just like cool seeing them together again. Quinn's discovery obviously was huge. Simon's conflict, because even though I feel bad, it definitely is a very interesting plot point. Finding out all the information from Janet, of course. Seeing Rhonda first arrive there once again was very interesting. Dawn's moment, and Mr. South seeing Mr. Martin was really cool. So now I'm just going to talk about a few of my favorite editing and cinematography moments. So I couldn't get a good picture of this part, but I really liked when they showed Mr. Anderson and Maddie's reflections on the water, but then they panned up and they showed Mr. Martin and Janet's bodies. I just thought that was really well shot. And then I really liked when they showed Maddie and Janet together. Like, I just think the way they shot it was really good and it looks very real. And I really liked this moment where Simon's in the car with Janet and there's a bunch of red lighting over him. It does make me think that like the red lighting might be kind of symbolizing something is going to happen to Simon, because obviously whenever red has been used in this season, it's always having to do with like the hellscapes or something. So now getting into some theories. So I know I mentioned this last week, but I do still think this is very interesting, and I feel like it's something we should still think about, because why did they mention, that moment with Mr. Martin and Janet in the 2nd episode, I think, where they said like 90% of the population can't smell cyanide? I just thought it's a very weird comment to make, and I wonder if it's gonna have anything to do with the fire or anything. This person was saying how maybe if Maddie does go back to her body, that she will still be able to see the ghosts, kind of like how Janet can still see them even though she's like in Maddie's body. Because Maddie has like spent so long as a ghost, like maybe it'll kind of thin the veil for her and she'll still be able to see them. So obviously that would be really nice, because then she could still kind of have a connection with them, although she is going to graduate soon, so I don't know how that would work out. But sadly, I also don't know if I believe this, because I don't even really think she is going to get her body back by the end of this season. So a lot of people, like I said, think that something bad is going to happen to Simon at the end, and specifically that he might actually die. This person thinks that, there was a lot of emphasis put on the prevalence of electricity, so maybe Simon will actually, the way he will die might involve electricity, kind of like Dawn's. And people did talk about, and when I went back and watched this episode, I did think this was interesting, how when he's in the car with Janet, they make a point to show that he has Nicole's taser in his pocket. So, they do think that he's gonna use this in some way later. This person says they even draw attention to the fact that this is something with electricity by placing lightning bolts on it. They say that they think in a show like this, the taser acts as a Chekhov's gun, which, for those who don't know, it's a theory that if you see a gun in a movie/TV show, that gun will then go off before the end of it. So while this is not a literal gun, it's a weapon of a sort, and Simon holding it is not the first introduction to knowing it's in the show we get. Xavier mentions that Nicole has it in her trunk when they first kidnap Janet, and Nicole mentions how she bets they're all glad she has it when trying to save Xavier. So at this point, we've seen it on screen. So if it's established that Simon has this taser, and the final episode will have elements of going through the scars, after it's been established this can create an energy surge, then I think this happens. He will be confronting Mr. Martin while holding the taser, and the energy surge happens. The barrier breaks but causes a surge in the taser he's holding. So I thought this was very interesting. I didn't know about that Chekhov's gun theory, and I do think it is weird how they lingered on the taser shot. And yeah, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if something happens to Simon, because I don't know, just the way that they were portraying him in this last episode, I don't know, is giving me like a bad feeling. And the fact, once again, that they had like the red light over him and everything. So this person, and once again, a lot of people think this, and I also wouldn't be surprised if this is the case, is that Mr. Martin actually started the fire. So this person says, because of what Janet said about her scar, we now know that literally burning to death is not the worst thing that ever happened to her, which is really depressing. It's more about her dad. And they were saying how everyone's scars seem to play on their worst fears about how their deaths are perceived. Like, Rhonda is watched by 2 classmates and a faculty member who do nothing to intervene. They think she deserves what Mr. Manfredo did to her. Charlie is relentlessly mocked, specifically for being gay and his scar. The horror isn't the shortness of breath and the impending doom, it's his classmates calling out his queerness even in his final moments. And Wally's mother calls him a loser for being killed. His death is instantaneous and observed as an outsider. His death is not the awful part. The horror is the disappointment from his mother, and she's not even disappointed that he died. She's disappointed that he's a loser, which, that's really sad. But yeah, so we now know we were in Mr. Martin's scar, not Janet's. It is Mr. Martin who is tormented by the thought that Janet was better and brighter than him, and that he robbed the world of someone who would have done all the things he was never good enough to accomplish. Janet isn't tormented that she was robbed of her future and likely would have happily continued doing chemistry experiments with no consequences for decades to come. It is Mr. Martin who is consumed by the thought that he stole her future. So I definitely think this is a very well-written theory. And yeah, because once again, even when I was just first theorizing that it was actually Mr. Martin's scar and not Janet's, a big reason that I always thought that is the fact that there was Janet, like, saying so angrily, I was robbed. That really makes it seem like it was at the fault of Mr. Martin, and that is, like, haunting him. So yeah, so a lot of people think that maybe he did something to her experiment that they were doing to make it go wrong and cause the fire, or just that he caused it in some way. This person has a really good post where they kind of talk about how there's kind of a lot of religious themes and imagery in this show, and how maybe, you know, them showing Mr. Martin with, you know, the song about the devil is kind of just alluding to him just being very vengeful and stuff, and how maybe Janet's death was his first passive revenge, you know, trying to get revenge about her dad getting him fired, probably. And then, like, that's kind of the reason that he still just, like, keeps going after her, because he wants her to kind of get revenge, like, at all times, like, even in the afterlife, and even, you know, when they get out in different bodies and everything. Especially since he ended up going down in the fire too, and he probably wasn't planning on that if he was the one who was trying to kill Janet. And then this person talked about Nicole's taser also, and said, I think clearly something is going to go down at the school with Mr. Martin and the other spirits, and Simon is going to use the taser in one way or another. And Shredhead commented, stick with this thought. So that probably confirms that. And also, like I said, I think, and I've seen some other people say this too, that maybe also Janet's dad had something to do with the fire, because it is weird that she mentioned that there weren't any charred walls or anything in her scar, which, you know, would be weird if she was the cause of the fire or whatever. So maybe her dad had more to do with it and actually came to the school and got mad and ended up pushing her in the fire, or causing the fire in some way accidentally or something. So maybe that's why, like, it's actually more just her dad in general that haunts her. And mentioning something I mentioned last time, again, some people think, you know, what if they really can't swap her body back, and maybe that's what's going to be so tragic about it. And once again, I'm going to bring up stuff that Shredhead had commented under different posts. Everything builds up to a real life or death moment for more than 2 characters, trust me. So once again, we know one of those is probably Maddie, the other one maybe Simon, maybe Mr. Martin. And then they said, when you see a door open, you can run towards it as fast as you can, or decide you have unfinished work to do. Maybe we'll see both. So maybe, once again, that's the fact that maybe Maddie actually will end up having to stay a little bit longer, but then maybe someone else will end up moving on, or something like that. Or, like, maybe Janet will cross over. And Shredhead said, a little ghost tells me you'll get your answer and a visit to Maddie's hellscape. And they were talking to someone who was theorizing about what her key was. So that is very interesting that we are going to see her hellscape. So now finally, I'm just going to talk about all the information that we have about hints about what's happening in the next episode. Or in the last episode, sadly. But in this little teaser that they had on Instagram and TikTok, they say, the group confronts their own pain and trauma as they travel through the scars, and the only way out is through. The ghosts are battling their past, but can they keep Maddie alive for her future? And, there's some pictures of them seemingly in Wally's scar, trying to get through it together. And there's pictures of them all hugging in the boiler room, and they seem to be looking at something. And there's a clip where Xavier is saying, "Are we too late?" And he's looking down, but they purposely kind of cut it off so you can't see exactly who he's looking at. Obviously, we would assume Maddie, but I don't know. Maybe, once again, something happened to Simon or something. And that kind of, once again, goes along with the theories that maybe, the swap isn't going to work, or there's some sort of time limit on it or something. And then these are some shots from the trailer that we haven't seen yet, and also another little teaser that's on like the Paramount Plus Instagram for the season. So there's this shot of Maddie underwater, which I had thought was going to be something when Janet like hit Mr. Martin with the oar, but obviously it wasn't. So now my only other guess is that maybe this is in Maddie's hellscape, because Shredhead, when they said that about the hellscape, they put like a ocean emoji at the end. So I'm thinking her hellscape might have something about her dad's drowning incident, and maybe that's why she'll be kind of like drowning too or something in hers. And there's just this shot that we kind of saw in the Instagram video of them like all in the boiler room. So obviously I think this is kind of going to be like the big like reveal at the end. There's a shot where it seems to be like an ambulance or a cop car, so I don't know what that's gonna be. Once again, is Simon gonna die or something? I don't know. And of course we have Nicole and Claire breaking into Eugene's storage unit, so I'm very excited to see what they find. And then there's like clips of Simon like in the school, and they're saying, "You're running out of time." And there's a clip where it seems like, Mr. Martin and Mr. Anderson's body is outside the school, so we know he's gonna come back in some way. And there's this shot of Janet that almost looks like another flashback, maybe from the actual fire scene. There's a clip where they're all running, and Janet's there too, outside the school. And Maddie here saying, "Am I too late?" once again. And there's these clips where it seems like Maddie, but she seems to be in her homecoming dress, like from season 1, but she also seems to be like on the steps of the like football stadium, and there's a shot of Wally looking and a shot of Maddie saying it's a trap. So I did see someone theorizing that maybe this will be something in Wally's scar, like maybe it'll be trying to like trick him to not actually go through with it or whatever, if it's like trying to show Maddie in there, but it's not actually her or something. I really don't know. Unless, her saying it's a trap is a whole different scenario. And then the title for this episode is called Fire Talk to Me. And the description for it is Maddie and the ghost confront Mr. Martin, ultimately trapping him in the afterlife. New information leads to a chase through the school's scars, delaying Maddie's return to the living world and putting her body in jeopardy. So obviously we know they're gonna confront Mr. Martin, and it says ultimately trapping him in the afterlife. So I don't know what that means exactly. I don't know if maybe they're going to trap him in his scar or something, which he honestly deserves. But yeah, we know they're going to do like a chase through all their scars, which I'm kind of confused about, because I'm like, obviously I don't think they're going to cross over yet. So I don't know what that's going to lead them to find out or something, which delays her return to the living world and puts her body in jeopardy. So yeah, that confuses me, because I'm like, why are they going through all this trouble to go through their scars and everything instead of just trying to help Maddie get back into her body? I'm not really sure. And apparently from the IMDb, the woman that was in the Mr. Martin's hellscape is in this episode again, and her name might be Alice. And the clues in the PR package for this episode are a red pine key, which, hinting that we're going to find out about what Eugene knew. A lighter, which I just feel like might just be, referencing that we're going to find out what happened with the fire. These essential oils, and they all have names of all the ghosts, like Maddie, Charlie, Rhonda, and Wally, but then there's also one called Simon. So once again, kind of giving me a bad feeling that something's going to happen to Simon, because why only him? And not any of the other living people. Maddie's necklace is in there, so I do think that is going to be her key. And, once again, we're going to see her hellscape. And there was a record player in there, and apparently they also left this note that said, "When the needle drops, the memories will spin back to life." So I don't know what that has to do with. The only thing that makes me think of is like Rhonda, like her song and everything, but I don't think she's gonna cross over yet, so don't really know about that. That's basically it. So I cannot believe we're about to watch the finale. I'm so excited, but I'm also so sad to see it end. I really hope we get a season 3 renewal announcement soon. So leave any of your final theories and comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to check out my review of the final episode, and I'm also going to do a whole video just kind of reviewing the entire season as well, so make sure to stick around for that, and I'll see you next week for the finale. Bye!